Hello, and welcome to my podcast today. Um, when I when I finished the podcast on um, improving your promise, talking about the concept of the marriage promise, I realized I wanted to share some hope to people who are, for some reason, trapped outside of that. They are in a promise that they did not want to see broken, but it was broken by the choice of the other person. And I should check this. Sorry about that. Have to make sure that the mic is on. So, my at its simplest form, I think the optimal marriage promise, whether that's the promise that you made or whether anybody encouraged you to make it, I still think that the optimal promise is a promise that says we are together going to find the best solution to every challenge. We are going to constantly be optimizing our life in every dimension except for one. And that is the dimension of who is going to be my optimizing partner. So if that's your concept of marriage, then the concept is not that you got stuck with me. And too bad. Till death do us part. Should have been more careful when you chose, but you're stuck with me. And it would obviously, in that case, who would it benefit more? It would tend to benefit the partner giving less to be stuck, to have the other person trapped by their promise. It might be a rule of thumb that if you don't want to look like the partner who is giving less, make sure that you are always willing to optimize. Because the one who says, nope, this is it, that's the promise, too bad, you got roped into this deal, now stick it out, is, sort of, I don't know the word, statistically, or, I mean, obviously, that's obviously the one who says, I'm getting the better deal. So I don't want to change this to a deal where I have to give more. More of the advantage is coming my way. Okay, so if you don't want to be seen as that, make sure that you're the one who says, yes, let's optimize. Maybe we made a deal, but let's renegotiate because we can make a better deal. Which brings me to another point that is pretty central and might be more applicable to people considering marriage, is that what is the line between marrying someone and counting on them to change? Well, should you do that? And that's a serious question. It's like you know the horrible side of it is when somebody marries someone, and as soon as they're in the marriage, they start demanding, you got to change this, and you've got to change that, and you've got to stop doing this, and you've got to stop doing that. And probably we've all seen some version of that and realized that, that's not decent. A decent person wouldn't do that to their partner. You don't marry someone, but neither do you marry. The opposite end would be to have this idea, well, I'm stuck. Can't do anything. I'm stuck. Never should have chosen this person, but I'm a good Christian, so I'm stuck. And you wouldn't even try to optimize. So where's the line between those? And I think it's a very specific line. And imagine looking out here, you see all sorts of brush. You see young trees. And so, admittedly, young trees are probably harder to tell apart. Once a tree has apples, you know it's an apple tree. Once a tree has acorns, you know it's an oak. Okay, so what about back when they were just saplings? The idea that makes the most sense to me is that you can marry an apple tree that doesn't have apples today and decently expect there to be apples in the future. Or you can marry an apple tree that only has a few apples, believing that with pruning and encouragement and fertilizing, you could expect a better crop of apples. But you cannot marry an apple tree expecting acorns. And so that would be the advice I would give if someone's on the forward side of marriage. As you look at that person, do not think that you can change them. If you're marrying an oak tree, you better want acorns, or don't marry them. But it is fair to look at them and say, they're just starting this journey. If all I see are one or two acorns, maybe what they need is somebody to believe in them and encourage them and help nurture them, and they could have an abundance of acorns. Same with apples. Okay, so we'll put those two things aside, and to try to center in on this question of what happens when you made a promise, wisely or unwisely, but you made a promise to somebody and that person decided that they couldn't take it with you, that they would rather end the promise, they'd rather break off the relationship than to try to optimize with you. Now, there's two situations. One is a situation where somebody makes, despite their promise, they say, I know I promised to optimize my life with you, but I found someone that I think is a better optimizing partner. So in my commitment to optimizing my life, I'm going to go ahead and optimize everything and optimize who I'm optimizing with. And that's a betrayal. I mean, because I would say the promise which you should make if you're going to get married. If you don't want to get married, you could just go on optimizing your life and optimizing your partners whenever you think there's a better one. But when you make a commitment to marriage, I think that the point you would be making is saying, I am not going to optimize who I optimize with. And somebody might do that. And it's almost like, I don't know, I have never been through it, but from observing people, I sometimes wonder if that's not more painful but less chaotic. You know, if someone says, oh, this is my new optimizing partner, I don't want to optimize with you, you can look at it and say, okay, I think you're being an idiot. I think you're underestimating what I brought to the table, and you're overestimating what that person brings to the table. But I get what you're doing. But the question that comes up when somebody says, no, I am not going to optimize my life with you, and they step out of the marriage without stepping into another one. And I want you to know that as painful as the loss of my wife has been emotionally, I don't think I have any window into how painful that is. To be told that you are so worthless that I'm just going to throw you away as a partner. If you're going through that, know that I understand that it's incredibly painful. I don't know how painful. But one of the problems that you have, probably, at least I've seen this many times before, whichever way your partner left, this in a situation where the partner says, I can't stand you, I'm getting out of here, and you're left saying, I think we could have optimized, the struggle that you have is to stop thinking about it. And I want to tell you that is a technical problem. I mean, people could tell you all they want. Oh, just get over it. And it's like, well, thanks. That's great advice, but I don't exactly know how to do that. There's a reason why you can't get over it. It's because your brain is constantly mapping its surrounding. Your world psychologically or archetypally is divided into the known and the unknown. And the known world has solutions. They don't always work, but they work more often than they don't work. And so you go through your day and you don't know exactly what you're going to encounter, but whatever you encounter, you have certain strategies to meet it. You know what to do. But the unknown, so the known world has known dangers and solutions. The unknown world has unknown dangers. And suddenly, when your partner said, that's it, I am not going to try to optimize my life with you. I'd rather split than try to work with you. You are thrown into a chaotic kind of hell. And your brain desperately needs to make sense of it. So the reason why you end up thinking about it when you don't want to be thinking about it is that your brain says, wait a minute, you have to have a solution. Because this was part of your known world, and it suddenly went into the unknown, and you have no idea what you were looking at. It's like, did I marry someone? Did I totally misunderstand who they are? And if you did, if they switched on you, then probably you could get over it. But you're like, did I miss something? Was there something I did wrong? Was there something that I could have done better? Should I have insisted on something sooner? Should I have not insisted on something? And you're in this solutionless chaos. And your mind constantly says, you need a solution. So I want to look at a couple things that might help you make sense of your past. Because your question is, should I have known? Could I have known? And so you're there. Your partner said, can't work with you. I just want out. And you say, I don't think I was that horrible of a person. Why did this happen? Well, the first thing that you might have neglected is that you might not have had anybody to tell you what your promise should have been. You may have been surrounded by traditional people who hadn't looked too deeply at the situation, and it started to say, just don't get divorced. That's it. Don't get divorced. It's like, really? Just put up with everything just as long as I don't get divorced? This seems to be a big issue. And they're like, just don't get divorced. That's it. Unfortunately, people in that boat oftentimes are the ones who before marriage said, just don't have sex till you're married. And they didn't give you strategies, and they didn't discuss what was at stake. And so I even know some situations where, to prevent having sex before marriage, people unadvisedly got married. And they won, all right? They waited till marriage. But they got married under this one-size-fits-all answer. And I don't like that answer. I very much think that the first thing that you might have done wrong, which then, if you went back and said, that was the problem, frees your mind from the chaos of saying, I don't know what was going on. So the first thing to try is thinking back and saying, okay, what if I had believed that I was promising to constantly optimize my relationship with my single optimizing partner? How early would that have started to change your marriage? Now, fair enough. Maybe you wanted apples and you married an oak tree. Shame on you. But at least it fits into a category. But if you wanted apples and you married an apple tree, and it never seemed like the apples came, maybe it's because you didn't optimize correctly. Maybe you didn't reward the behaviors you wanted more of. Maybe you did. Maybe you undermined your own desires because you had this one-dimensional idea that you just don't get divorced. That's all you do, is you don't get divorced. Okay, there's one thing. Maybe if you put that back and you realize, oh, that's where my marriage went wrong at a very, very early point. And then hopefully that lets you come up with a solution and say, well, if I ever wonder what I did wrong, now I have an answer. And so I can go into the future and not worry about making that same mistake. Promises aren't to chain you to the undesirable. They aren't to force you to do the suboptimal. The purpose of a promise is to coordinate with a specific person for a specific duration of time. And that in marriage, that specific person is your spouse, and that specific duration of time is until death do us part. It's the coordination that you got from the promise that maybe was the only thing that was emphasized. So you could say, okay, I'm going to optimize. Okay, here's the second thing. And maybe this is the only two I'll go through today. But the second thing that I think, if you say, wait a minute, was my husband always a tyrant? Was my wife always a tyrant? Did they always demand their own way? Were they never willing to optimize? And I will tell you something. The guard against tyranny is at the lowest level. You don't very often get a situation where you get to go from tyranny to freedom, unless it's at an organic level. Okay, so if you thought somebody else is going to fix the problem, if you think you're governed by a tyrant and you think someone else is going to fix the problem, you're right. But that someone else is going to be a greater tyrant. The story of the conquest of the nations, the Romans took over the Greek Empire. It wasn't that it went from the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great to freedom. It went from tyranny to a greater tyrant. The only way that you can have something go from tyranny to freedom is if at the lowest level you push back. So let's take it's kind of a trope, but I think it's useful. So your wife says, I'm going from the guy's perspective, your wife says, do these pants make me look fat? And that is a question that you can't answer. Because if you say yes, then you're saying she looks fat. If you say no, you're saying it's not the pants that make you look fat. And so there's lots of jokes about how you handle that. And you can just say, no, that's not the kind of question that you answer, that I will answer. But I think you have to go one step further. Because that is a very benign form of tyranny. To ask you a question which you cannot defend yourself. They happen all over in marriage. I had a list of them. I don't know where it is right now. But I will tell you, in every exchange in your life, you need to do a cost-benefit analysis. You need to say, it's going to cost me this much to get this outcome, and here's what I'll get from it. Is it worth it? There's only one place that I know of so far where you don't, no, maybe two. There is a love without precondition. But negatively, we'll just go there. Negatively, there's only one place I know of where you don't do the cost-benefit analysis. And that is when somebody is displaying, however benign, tendencies towards tyranny. When someone is a tyrant, you have to understand that I divide them into petty tyrants and grandiose tyrants, but I think all grandiose tyrants were petty tyrants. So the tyrant that you are involved with, their favorite tool is to pay close attention to the differential between the pain of addressing the issue and the pain of enduring the issue. That's their superpower. They're zeroed in on how much pain it is, and they will specifically, they will raise the amount of pain. And you can put someone in a horrible place if you increase the differential. No, if you keep the differential intact. If you say it will take 100 units of effort to address this problem, but only 95 units of effort to put up with it. And that's how tyranny spirals upward. And that's the reason why somebody who wasn't a tyrant when you married them might have become a tyrant. And it was because you let them. And by the time, so as it spiraled up, this differential, and they weren't a horrible person. These aren't the terrible things that we do to each other as husband and wife. They're small things that we do. I'll tell you, one of my tyrannies is that I would agree to do so. Let's say I agreed to do the dishes when the dishes need to be done. But my definition of when the dishes need to be done has a whole lot more dishes piled up than her definition of when the dishes need to be done. And so I call myself a good person because I'll do the dishes whenever they need to be done. But I never do the dishes because I know that to her, she can't stand it. So that would be a classic place where I might be tyrannizing. I might not want to be tyrannizing. I might not even realize what I'm doing, but I am tyrannizing. And so my wife brings it up to me. She says, honey, you got to do the dishes before they're piled up. And if I can make convincing me that the dishes need to be done before they're piled high more painful than doing the dishes, I can tyrannize her. And believe me, I can do that, right? I'm really good at arguing points endlessly. So if my wife had to convince me that the dishes need to be done early, I didn't do this on dishes. I am telling you I did do this. But if she had to convince me that the dishes need to be done before there's 3 meals worth piled up, I could make the process of convincing me so frustrating that she'd be like, well, fine, I'll just do them. And what did I do? I made the differential, the cost of changing this, higher than the cost of putting up with it. So she puts up with it for another week. And then she comes back and she's like, no, I can't handle this. I need you to do your part. I'm like, well, of course I'll do my part. What do you think I am? Some sort of ogre? I'll gladly do the dishes when they need to be done. And the cost of arguing it through again is higher than the cost of putting it up. So she puts up with it again and again and again. That may be how your optimizing partner took advantage of you. You just wanted things to work, and it was easier to just make them work, so you just made them work. But the problem was that they continued to take advantage of you. And then someday when you finally said, no, we have to optimize. This isn't going to work. When you finally dug in your heels and said, hey, this is more important than whatever else. When you finally decided you couldn't keep doing cost-benefit analysis, they said, no, it's not worth it. The relationship isn't worth it. The cost is too big, and the cost was too big probably because you hesitated. I don't know if I'm going to follow up on this or not. I'm sure there are other reasons, but try these two. Go back to your broken relationship and take a look at these things and find out whether maybe you can at least answer the question to your satisfaction of how did things get so bad. And I think it's worth answering that, because then maybe you can be at least relieved. You'll still be in a painful place, but at least you'll be relieved of the chaos of always wondering, saying, what happened and why? So I hope that's encouraging to you. If you listen to this because you haven't yet been married, I hope I didn't scare you from marriage, but I hope I equipped you to answer some questions that I think are very important. So I'm going to go, and we got to take the pontoon in before it gets any deeper into the fall. So that's where I'm headed next. So that's my adventure. I don't know what yours is, but whatever your adventure for the day is, happy trails.